lost? This video contains footage from the 2024 game Pools. Some of the footage is spoilers from late game. Have you ever been lost? Felt the fear creeping in as you slowly realize that you really don't know what direction to move in to get to where you want to be? Hi, I'm Cantor, and I'm here to talk to you about being lost and how it's a fundamentally unsettling experience. Humans thrive on understanding their surroundings and having a goal and knowing they are on a path to that goal. To lose track of any of those circumstances can be fear-inducing while we work to reorient ourselves and get back on track. Plenty of show, movie, and book has been written about being lost. There's, of course, the TV show Lost, about a plane full of people stranded on an island with no way to get to or communicate with the outside world. There's also the Blair Witch Project, where a group of filmmakers gets lost in the woods and then scary things happen, as well as the Stephen King book The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, about a young girl who gets lost in the woods on a hike, and also it has something to do with baseball. It's an underrated and largely forgotten about King novel, but I remember it fondly from when I read it 20 years ago. Being lost can also mean knowing where you are physically, but being lost in an emotional or spiritual way. This second sense of lost has too many examples in media to name. I would even claim that almost all fiction at some point features a character who has lost their way psychologically. This brings us to the game Pools, which came out this year and is a liminal space game that does not feature any monsters, but instead focuses on using the atmosphere of the very strange places the player character navigates to create unease and sometimes fear. I am someone who is scared easily by good atmospheric horror, so this was a great game for me. I found it unsettling and spooky, but in a way that I kind of liked. In Pools, not only do we not know where we are, we don't know who we are. We can hear the player character breathing, but we have no way of checking our appearance or assessing what we were doing before ending up in Pools world. The game consists of wandering through uncanny valley environments, many of which contain water, supposedly in search of an exit. The sound design is subtle, but at times very frightening, and the environments are just maze-like enough to be fun, but not too frustrating. In this game, we are definitely lost. Not only do we not know where we are, this world we are exploring bears little resemblance to our own. We are firmly ungrounded. And it's a strange and unnerving process to explore this bizarre world. I imagine that if I woke up here in real life, that hopelessness would eventually set in for me as I explored and became increasingly convinced that there was almost certainly no way home. And that's the core of being lost in general, actually. To be lost is to be separated from one's home without the knowledge of how to get back. That can be a literal home, as in the place that you live, or the mental home of understanding what you are doing and how and why. Home can also simply be the universe you've lived in your whole life, where the physics make sense to you and you aren't trapped in endless rooms of swimming pools, chairs, and humanoid statues. Getting lost can be fun though. When I travel, one of my favorite things to do when I get to a new city is wander. I keep my phone in my pocket until I am ready to navigate back to my hotel, and I follow streets by whim to see what I can find. This is how, when I was once staying in Ikebukuro in Tokyo, I ended up stumbling upon Frog's Bar. Frog's Bar was tiny, as most bars in Tokyo are, with room for maybe 10 people to sit and drink. And when I arrived there, no one was there except the middle-aged bartender who was smoking a cigarette. The bar was decorated with statues of frogs and posters of frogs, and on the one TV mounted to the wall, a nature documentary about frogs was playing. I stayed at Frog's Bar for an hour and a half and had a great conversation with the bartender. We both could only communicate through translation apps on our phones, though, because we didn't speak each other's language. He had questions about American politics, and I had questions about what to do and see on what could possibly be my only ever trip to Japan. It's one of my favorite travel memories, and then I opened Google Maps to find my way back to the couchsurfing.com host I was staying with. But Cantor, you say? Can one really claim to be lost if you can just open an app and unlost yourself? Also, wandering around strange cities can be dangerous because if you aren't educated by the locals, you don't know what parts of town are risky for a tourist on foot. And to that I say, okay, you have a point. Truly being lost can be quite terrifying. And as I think about it, I am unsure if I have ever been truly physically lost for more than a couple minutes. There was one time as a kid when I was at the beach and the ocean water had pulled me away from my family, and when I got out of the water, I couldn't find them. But my dad shouted my name and waved at me from very far down the beach and called me back. One time in Brooklyn, before I had a smartphone, I couldn't find a subway station to help me get back to my hotel, but then I stumbled upon a police officer who explained to me where to find the subway station, and then in the subway there's a map that makes it easy to figure out how to get to any station, and I knew the name of the station next to my hotel, and so all was well. So maybe I can't claim to have ever truly experienced being lost. And in the modern world in general, it's becoming harder to get physically lost. More land has been developed into streets that can be navigated by car, bike, or sometimes foot. And a lot of people, at least in the United States where I live, have maps and directions to pretty much everywhere in their pocket at all times. You really have to go to like a big national park or an open span of woods to get lost. I live in the suburbs and I have a smartphone. It's just not going to happen. What about being emotionally lost, though? Just as we live in an age where being physically lost becomes harder to experience, it seems as if being emotionally lost is a phenomenon happening everywhere. Through reading online and talking to friends, it seems like everyone is disillusioned with their jobs, their family, where they are currently living, their leaders, and so on. Some people are seeking a sense of safety, others a sense of purpose, others a sense of fulfillment. Many people are separated from a sturdy, good sense of a psychological home. I feel it too. I often feel like I'm floating through life instead of having a clear goal. I'm fairly scared about what the future holds right now. I often don't know on what project my energy is best spent focused on. I truly feel like everything is about to fall out from under me. It seems like the obvious answer is to, well, get found. Find your purpose, find your goal, find your direction, find something that grounds you as the future gets ever closer. But what if ending your state of being lost just isn't possible? What if you have tried everything and you are still wandering hallways of pools in search of home? Can you be okay while being emotionally lost? In Pools, eventually we learn that the entire game was being watched on a videotape. We do not know the identity of the player character on the tape or the person watching the tape. Maybe they both are the same person, for all we know. And whether or not that's true, is the person watching the tape watching with fear or curiosity? Maybe there is something appealing about those endless halls of rooms and pools. Getting lost over and over again, in a way, is the only way to make it through life. Really and truly, every single plan I've ever had for my life has eventually fallen apart, either partially or wholly. And where I've ended up right now today isn't at all where I planned. After college, I wanted to get a mathematics PhD, but I bombed the math GRE, a test for graduate school in the United States, and went to library school in Canada instead. While in library school, I knew I was going to stay in Canada forever, and then I experienced a severe episode of depression and dropped out of school and moved home to the US. When I got divorced, I told myself I was going to embrace spinsterhood and be single for 5 whole years before I even considered dating again, and then 4 months later I got together with a friend from college, and now 5 whole years have gone by with him as my partner. There are real risks to being physically or emotionally lost, of course. Both are dangerous circumstances, but to never experience either means we miss out on new experiences. By leaving home for college or a job, you learn to be your own person in a new way, in a new place. By making a mistake and having to recalibrate your life plan, you learn not only how to avoid that mistake in the future, but how to be with your failure and heal from it and move on. While overall I found pools to be very creepy, at various times I found myself being curious about the surroundings and enjoying exploring. Maybe the fate of the player character is to wander forever. Maybe they did eventually end up back home. Maybe there isn't much difference between those two states of being, as one moves through life, cycling endlessly between the two. Imagine you get out of the ocean. Imagine you look around and see only the faces of strangers and you don't know what direction to walk in. Imagine you hear the voice of someone you love calling out in the distance. You look and you see their hand waving in the air. You see home and you go home until the beautiful, mysterious, dangerous ocean calls to you again.